And before we get going here, folks, I'd like to do an acknowledgement of our traditional lands. So we acknowledge that the Royal Roads campus is located on the traditional lands of the Lekwungen peoples, the Songhees, and the Esquimalt First Nations. And it is with gratitude where we live, learn, and work here, where the past, present, and future of Indigenous and non-Indigenous students, staff, and faculty come together. So thank you so much all for being here with us today. And of course, the reason we're here is for Royal Roads University, our MA in Professional Communication program here. We're going to have some wonderful conversation here today. I'm always pleased to be joined by our wonderful co-hosts and guests. So I'm pleased to be joined by Dr. Chaseten Remillard, who's an assistant professor and the program head for the MAPC program. Chase, nice to see you.
Hello.
And I'm also pleased to be joined by Iman Kassam, who's an alumni of the program. Thank you so much, Iman, for joining us today.
Yeah, so happy to be here.
Thanks so much. And my name is Ariana Konjerski. I'm an education specialist at Royal Roads University, so always delighted to take part in these webinars with you all. And a brief agenda before we get going here today, folks. So I'll just kick us off with a brief overview of the Royal Roads experience. We'll do a program overview, and we'll also talk about the MAPC experience with our special guest, Iman. I'll review some admissions criteria and how to apply, and then questions, feel free to post them throughout, and we're happy to chat with you as we move along. And you may be asking yourself, why consider Royal Roads? We have an alumni survey that we'd like to share with you here, a recent alumni survey. So 93% of our alum say that Royal Roads has positively influenced their personal and professional lives. 92% say that they felt supported by staff and faculty. 90% say that Royal Roads provided them with the tools and knowledge required for a leadership role in the workplace. And 89% say that we provided them with the tools and knowledge needed to be innovative in the workplace. I'll also share a few photos of our space here. You may be seeing this building on the top left and thinking that looks familiar. That is our Hatley Castle. This has been in many famous movies. So movies like X-Men, Deadpool, many Disney films all throughout the years. We also have a variety of gardens and green space. So we have a photo of our Japanese garden just to the right of that. We also have our Esquimalt Lagoon to the bottom left, which is our migratory bird sanctuary that we have on campus. And we've also been doing online and blended learning. We'll chat a little bit about that as we move throughout here, but we've been doing that for well over 25 years now. So just to the bottom right, you'll see an homage to that. And we're also pleased to be in Ashoka U certified Changemaker campus, which is an innovative approach to education that prepares students as they address world problems, encourage others, and act for the good of all. And with that, folks, I will pass it off to Chase and Iman to talk a little bit about what the student experience is like in the program. Take it away.
Thanks, Ariana. Yeah, and welcome, Iman. Nice to see you. Last time we saw each other, you were on campus just finishing your program. And since then, you've gone on to join the ranks of instructors and professors by teaching now. Where are you at? What institution are you teaching at right now?
So I'm teaching journalism at Seneca at York in Toronto.
Beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
very good. Yeah. And yeah, maybe I'll let you introduce yourself because you came to the program, I think in 2019, 2020.
2022, 22. I just graduated, 22. Yeah.
Brain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Time. It's a blur.
Yeah. So, okay, so my name is Iman. I am a journalist. I've been in journalism for 14, 15 years. And I was a pandemic reporter. And that's sort of a time where we saw the newsroom change. Inside the newsroom, outside the newsroom, we saw a lot change. And I started questioning what my role in journalism was going to continue to be. And while I was trying to figure myself out, I thought, why not go back to school and sort of level up some of my credentials? I shopped around to different schools and I met with different faculty, and I was really scared about going back to school after so long. I had a hard time academically my entire life, and I didn't know if I could do a master's. I really enjoyed, my initial talks with some of the faculty, Chase included. But I had some hesitations, you know, going into a program that was going to be a hybrid program, most of it virtually online. And then going back as an adult, you know, my late 30s, almost, I turned 40 in the program. So I was like, I was hesitant. I was a bit scared about what that would experience would be like for me. And interestingly enough, those two hesitations I had about, you know, the hybrid, and it would be, what would it be a lonely experience, you know, to not do the stuff in person? What would that be like for me? And for someone who is not, I didn't think of myself as very academic. Like, what would that be like for me to not go see my professors in person and not be on campus every day? And the second thing about my age, so those two things ended up being what I loved most about Royal Roads and the program, was that because it wasn't on campus, so much of my connections with my teachers were one-on-one, you know? And the age thing, because the program is designed for working professionals, everyone in the class was at different stages of their career, and learning about, you know, them and their career. I ended up learning as much from the students as I did from the teachers, which I thought was really, really cool. And yeah, no, I wouldn't say it was a lonely experience. I've made lifelong friends from the program, because Royal Roads has been doing this hybrid online learning for so long. Like, that is the whole, you know, thing behind this school. They've mastered it in a way that other schools haven't. And so a lot of our group work and online communications and stuff I found really seamless. And yeah, I've built some like really lifelong friends from it. So for me, the first, I don't know, month or two of the program for me was really stressful, because it was such a hard pivot into academia from like the world of journalism into academia. Was such a hard pivot for me. It was so much reading. It was a lot of catching up. But once that sort of like stress and that imposter syndrome and stuff quieted down, and we got to talk to each other in the program, everyone felt the same way. I found I was able to move through it relatively seamlessly, you know. The teachers were really available and present. Instead of like set office hours, you could kind of like book one-on-ones at your convenience and stuff. And yeah, what else can I say about that? I went the thesis route. I don't know how popular the thesis route is. I think it probably changes every year. I loved it. I loved it. And so many students were maybe intimidated by the thesis route, and so they went the course-based route. And then partway into the second year, they were like, oh man, I wish I went the thesis route, you know? So my advice, I'm team thesis here. I would say if you have a thesis idea, go for it, do it. I found it so much easier, because then like most of your second year is then just honing in on your one thesis question, on your one topic. You know, you're building everything around putting together a thesis, instead of taking all these different courses and writing all these different papers. All of my papers that I was writing was all sort of like, my end goal was to put out this thesis, this dissertation. Yeah, so I really liked that process a lot. Chase, what am I missing? What can I share?
Well, I was going to ask you, you know, because you came to the program from journalism,
Yeah.
but there are people in the program from all other backgrounds. I was just wondering, you know, without naming names, you know, what were some of the other folks in the room in terms of their experience in communications, or like how did they, you know, how did, you know, you're not in a room full of journalists. Who are you in a room with?
Oh yeah, no, comms professionals, comms experts from so many different walks of life, from government, First Nations, nonprofit, community work. I mean, online, digital world, everyone. I was the only journalist in this program, but every year, it seems like every year there's always one or two journalists that come into the comms program. Because I say that, you know, journalists and comm staff are kind of cut from the same cloth. We do the same things, we think in the same way. Our input and outputs are very similar. And so we learned a lot from each other in the program. There was a lot of areas where I fell short, you know, things like communication strategies, communication planning, things like that. Like I was far behind the rest of my class. And so it was really cool to do that knowledge sharing. I taught them about press releases and about media events and stuff and how to do them more effectively or more efficiently. And they, you know, helped me with synthesizing ideas for a comms plan and how to think in a bigger picture and communicate it in small bite-sized information. We all have the same skill set. It's about how we think about things and how we think about issues and presentations, the stories we want to get out to people. So I found that, like, being a journalist that studied comms, I have a much broader picture of communications now because of it.
Yeah, that's I mean, that's been my experience teaching in the program, is that I think one of the reasons why I love teaching in the program is because you walk into the room and you have no idea who's in that room until you get there. You could have people who have just graduated from their undergrad and they're just kind of doing that like straight through. There's one or two that are always doing that. Then there's other people who have more experience in professional communications in terms of years than I've been teaching. I've been there for 15 or 20 years. They're sort of taught, they've worked their way up and now they've got to that point where they need the credential. And then you have people who are coming from journalism, or they're coming from other creative areas as storytellers, and people who have been doing something and they didn't know what it was. And then when they found the program, they were like, oh, I've been doing communications. That's what I've been doing. And so there's a really nice mix of people. I was going to ask you that your cohort came to campus for 2 weeks. Last year, we made a change where the spring intake no longer comes to campus. We do a digital, we call it a digital residency or an intensive. And so we offer both. I was wondering, there is the time and commitment and the cost to come to campus, but could you speak to what that experience was like coming to campus?
Okay, look, hands down, I loved the being on campus. The first time, it was scary. It was nerve-wracking. It was like I knew I was in for a lot of work, a lot of in-person work, and meeting the folks that I had just, my cohort that I had been working with and meeting virtually with for a month and a half, I think, at that point. I chose to stay on campus in the dorm rooms, like a true, I don't know, first year university experience kind of thing. And I loved it. I loved working together with my cohort and being in person, meeting my teachers in person, putting, IRL faces and names together. And then the second residency, it was like it was so sweet, like we were all coming back so excited to see each other, and like we knew what the campus was, we knew who the teachers were, we knew who each other were, and now we were like excited. It was like a reunion almost. A second time. I loved the on-campus stuff. The residencies, it is expensive. Yeah. I got the SHRC grant, so I was lucky that some of these expenses for me were covered by a grant. And that's another thing I would say, meet with the scholarship office, because the SHRC is not the only grant. There are other grants out there. Use the free money that is out there. Yeah.
That's really good advice, because honestly, I was just talking to student awards and I was surprised. They were like, we don't understand, but we have awards that are not claimed every year, and that's just sitting there. We need people to apply for them, and it's just a little bit of homework on behalf of you as students to go in and kind of figure out which ones fit into your experience, because some of them are very niche, but they're there and there's a lot of money. And then you were one of I think you were the only one in your cohort that won the SHRC, which stands for, if you don't know this, Social Sciences Humanities Research Council Award. And every master's student can apply, and it's worth now. It was 17.5, but I think they increased it now because of inflation to
Yeah.
25 or
Yeah,
something.
they increased it by a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a great thing to apply for, and on everyone is eligible when you're in the master's. You can apply for it. The deadline is December, and it doesn't matter what if you go into the May or the September, you can still apply for it for your second year. So it's a great opportunity. I was going to ask you about, you said you did the thesis. Um, what are some of the courses that stood out for you in the program? You know, there are some that maybe surprised you that you liked that you didn't think that you were going to like, or that you learned more from than you anticipated, or
Wow, you're really testing me now. I don't even know if I remember the names of the courses. What was Barb's course?
Barb's course is organizational communications. Yeah, 550.
Boring name, fun class. That was a really fun one. Yeah, that was really great. A lot of hands-on skills in that one. That was like when I was referencing like having to pull from the knowledge in the classroom. That was one of them. Where it was like, okay, come together, let's share knowledge because we got to make this work. And it was a real practical exercise. They give you an organization that needs a comms plan, and they're a real life organization. You can call them up, you meet with them. If it happens on campus, then like they can come to campus as well, and you can meet with them and talk to them like, what are your goals? What are your objectives? What are you working towards? And then together as a team, you build a comm strategy, which was so fun because you get to think really creatively and outside the box. And hopefully the organization takes your comms plan and, you know, can grow and benefit from that. What was Jose's class?
Was it digital or no?
You know, okay, so I came into the program, like I said, as a journalist, but I was also pretty set that I wanted to write a thesis. I didn't even know what a thesis was when I came into it, to be clear. I just knew I wanted to do it, but I had no idea really what it entailed or what it was. I hadn't written a research paper, forever, you know? So there are elements of all the classes that I really liked. Learning about the ethics of communication and learning about you know, like TRC recommendations and how we can incorporate that into our communications plans, learning about Black and Indigenous communicators, yeah, the contributions of like so many communicators throughout history, challenging profs also to be like, why didn't we include this? Why should we include that? And why don't we include other things? The reading list can sometimes be daunting. It's a lot. Find the tools that you need to get through it all. Skim read, speed read, you know, read the intro and the extra of things that you know, find ways around it, because that's probably the most daunting is the amount of reading, but like, don't let it scare you too much. Don't let it set you back too much. I have dyslexia and I had to learn a whole new way of reading to make it through all the coursework. And yeah, all the classes have really great readings and some really, I don't know, boring readings that you just have to do because you have to learn the history of, you know, some things and you just have to know it. It has to be in your knowledge set. Yeah, so one of the tools that I learned that I did with a group of students was when some coursework was just too much, we split up the readings and we each took 3 and then met on Zoom and debriefed each other on them, you know, things like that. Audio
That's
versions
great.
of things.
Yeah, that's a really good piece of advice, is that, you know, the cohort is there not just as like a networking uh potential down the road because all these people leave and they go and get their jobs and you know them, and then you're like, oh, I know the person who's whatever, right? You know, somebody saying, oh, I know a prof of journalism at Seneca, right? Now they have that in their Rolodex, but it's also really about a support. And that's what we've noticed as well, is that in the cohort model, both as an online and in person, like when you meet online or you meet in person, you're always, no matter when you start, you're always with that group of people throughout your program. And that really helps, from what I hear from students, because I didn't take the program, but from what I hear and observe from students, is it really helps keep you motivated And one of the big motivators for a lot of students when they are doing their thesis, when they are doing their research paper, or they're choosing their electives, is that it's like super important that they're with their cohort to graduate and convocate together and to walk across that stage. And that's a real powerful motivator because, you have to sustain yourself and keep yourself motivated to complete this. And because of that, we have really high completion rates. Like for a graduate program, our completion rates are just like I think they're in the high 80s or low 90s, which is incredible considering that on average it's usually around 65% of people who go into grad school that complete it. So, we're talking almost at 100%. And usually the people who don't graduate on time are people who have had personal reasons that have stopped them. They've had to step back and take care of a family member or something like that. But most people, barring some sort of personal setback, will finish with their cohort, and I think that's because the cohort is such a powerful motivator. Did you find that? Like, is that something that motivated you? I mean, you were doing your
I
thesis.
was I was so surprised. I thought that like virtual learning was going to be like a lonelier, more isolating experience, but it actually maybe in some ways made us tighter and closer. The residencies really helped with that, but no, we really relied on each other. And I was going to say it's a smaller program. I actually don't know relatively to other schools, but I found like we all knew each other. We all got to know each other. And I eventually learned what everybody did in their walks of life. They were all professionals. We all held full-time jobs while doing this program. And so there was a lot of real life on the job issues that came up that we could workshop together. Yeah, so it actually, it built a pretty tight-knit community, like I said, like lifelong friends from the program. I do want to mention more about the thesis and about scholarships. The scholarship office is going to be so happy to hear from you. They're some of the nicest people on campus. Use them. I can't stress enough. There is free money out there. Applications can be daunting. It takes work to fill out applications. My SSHRC application, I worked day in, day out. I only found out about the SSHRC in October, end of October, early November, something like that. And it was due a month later. And I was up against students that had been starting, months before me. But I ran my SSHRC proposal through almost every professor. Everyone that would read it, I ran it through them. Sure, my research idea was fun. It was great, all of that. But I think I got the SSHRC because I really utilized everybody, including the research office. And I had everyone read over my application. I must have put together about a dozen versions, maybe more, on my application before I sent it in. So yeah, use it, do it. And if you are debating the thesis route, but like me, I didn't know what it was. It was a bit scary. Like I didn't know what a thesis is. What do you do? How do you put it together? What is methodology? How do I even just Google it, look at the videos, send Chase an email and be like, can you give me a quick breakdown on what is a thesis? What do I need to know? What do I do? Because it is a really fun route in the program. Don't let the idea of a thesis, scare you away, because it is a big project. My thesis, it's supposed to be roughly 60 pages. Mine was closer to 100. But you have a full year and a bit to do it. And the earlier you sort of start on this idea, the sooner you can start, piecing together different elements. And as you go through your reading list throughout all your courses, you can start pulling out the readings that are going to be relevant to your thesis. So it's all a very holistic approach to like getting you to your end goal.
I love that you plugged the thesis because I think the thesis is a great route for some people.
The best route, like you end up spending the entire year focused on one research question, really focused in obsessively on one idea, as opposed to doing 5 or 6 other courses with their own assignments and their own, papers and stuff.
You also did something really cool because you applied for the storytellers and you were a finalist. for that. I put the link in there. And so
Oh yeah.
that was another thing that you did, which was really cool. And
Yeah.
what was that? Because that was an award. It wasn't part of the shirk that you won, but that was an award that you also applied for and was shortlisted.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so that is a storytellers competition. You put together a video where you present your idea in a video. Some of them do even just podcasts. It doesn't even have to be visual. I've seen winners that write poems, you know, so it also can be written. Majority of people do it in a video. And you present your research idea. It has to be a shirk research. So it doesn't have to be yours. If you're not working on a shirk project, it could be somebody else's, you know. That's fine. And yeah, then you know, I got shortlisted down to the top 5, I think, and then you go off and you present it at a conference, and you get up on stage and you get to present your idea in like 2 to 3 minutes. Unfortunately, I had a bit of a health issue at that time, and I couldn't make the trip out to Saskatoon to actually present it, to actually do it. But yeah, if the link to the video is there, it's a little cringy, but enjoy. Yeah.
Maybe we could take a few questions from folks because I know you have to go in about 10 minutes at most. So there's a question that came in that says, how would you suggest to stay focused and dedicated while working on your thesis, given that there is so much effort and required?
Yeah, it's a good question. Your thesis essentially answers one question, right? So I'll give you an example. My research question, my thesis was on how Generation Z Canadians determine trust and credibility in the news. So everything I read and every assignment I did, I tried to hone it back into that research question. I used my time wisely by doing that. If we had an assignment, I asked, can I do it this way so that I can build a reading list, so I could build, you know, this to eventually, you know, make it into my thesis. Time management is the obvious one. Split up work between your groups, you know, embrace group work. That's daunting, you know, group work can suck sometimes, but it can also really help you. Talk to your professors, talk to your teachers, and speed read, skim read, speed read. Set reasonable goals for yourself.
I have a question because there's not one that's come in. Well, there is one just now that came in, but I was going to ask you real quick, what has the degree given you? Because you've talked about it being in the degree, but what has the degree given you as you exited out into quote unquote the real world from the program?
Yeah, you know, I've been in my world for a really, really long time. And being able to step out of it and step into academia did 2 things for me. One, it really validated some of my concerns within journalism. Being able to step away from the industry, take a breather, and learn at the same time, it really validated some of the crap that I was dealing with inside the newsroom, some of the fundamental ethical issues inside the newsroom that I really was struggling with. I had literature now to back it up. I had research now to back up. And I'm not the only one that feels this way. It's the entire Reuters Institute that feels this way too. You know, like that was really, really validating. And 2, I was scared. I've defined myself as a journalist my entire adult life. And now I did not want to be in mainstream daily news anymore. If I'm not a journalist, who am I? If I'm not tethered to a news organization, then what am I? Who am I? Getting this degree gave me so much more confidence. I leveled up in a lot of ways. I don't want to go back to the newsroom, and it's a sense of pride now. It's not a sense of fear. I have the credentials behind me. I am still working on publishing my paper, but it's getting published. I'm telling you, I'm turning my thesis into currently 4 publishable papers. It's a ton of work. This is the work that you can choose to do after your degree if you want to do it. I want to do TED Talks one day, you know, like I want to do workshops and teach and be a guest lecturer in different things. I want to maybe go get a PhD. Sounds like a lot of work, but like maybe do a PhD. But like, you know, having this master's now gives me the confidence along with the credentials, but it's the confidence to like speak on matters that I have cared about my entire adult life. Ethics in journalism, the policies within journalism, how we tell stories, the towing that line of telling stories and exploiting people's stories, you know, the changes within the digital world of communications, and what the future of journalism is going to look like. Now I can pretty confidently talk about those things, and I have, yeah, the credentials, the papers and stuff behind me to do that. I would
Yeah.
never have taken on this kind of work prior to this program. Never. I would have been like, who am I to talk about these things? I can't talk about these things. I'm just one lowly journalist, you know? Yeah, no, it's done a lot for my life and my career.
There's another question that's sort of in the same way, and it said, you know, what's the value add? You know, what's the
Okay, well,
value?
my paycheck has nearly doubled. You know, 14 years as a journalist, you know, and all it took was a degree, you know, to like, yeah, not quite doubled, but nearly doubled. Yeah, I can take on more higher paying work now. I'm a workshop facilitator, you know, I develop and deliver workshops in a bunch of different areas, you know. I'm developing research on the harassment of online journalists, and I'll be able to present that research one day. I'm working part-time as a professor of journalism. I would not be able to take on a professor job without a master's, and it is part-time work and it pays really well.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I
Yeah,
currently have 3 jobs right now, and I don't feel like my plate's full.
yeah. And I think, you know, I was thinking about this question about value add, you know, and what a degree, what the MA gives folks. And I was thinking about another alum that graduated from the MA, named uh, Sharad, and this is his website, and he gave a talk similar to what you did, Iman, to the undergrads, and he was saying one of the things that he felt so validated for was that the degree gave him this like credential that validated his knowledge and his abilities that he knew he had, but he had never had like the parchment somehow made that like real for him. It just sort of
Yeah.
like validated him in such a way that it really gave him a lot of confidence to follow what he knew was right for him as like a career. And that it was this sort of empowerment moment for him when he got that parchment to say, sort of like, yes, I do know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and for those that do the thesis, you become a type of expert, at least in that one very specific question that you answer. You're
Mhm.
kind of like an expert in that now. I can
Yeah.
talk very comfortably of how Gen Z Canadians determine trust and credibility in the news. I can talk your ear off about it, you know? Just give me a
Um,
mic, I'm ready, you know?
yeah. Um, Maybe one last thought, and then because I know you have to go, so maybe one last parting sort of piece of advice or something for
Yeah.
them to think about.
Um, Academia can be very scary. Re-entering the world of education can be very scary. Um, make it what you need it to be, you know? Ask for the things you need, carve out the time that you need, do the self-care that you need, ask all the questions. I'll throw my email in here if you have any like specific questions that you want to ask me.
Thank you.
Um, it's so worth it. It's so worth it. It's made me feel so much more confident and capable in what I do. And it's just the beginning for me. Whether I do a PhD or not, I think from what the confidence I have learned, it's not just the parchment, it's the confidence and credibility, you know, that I have now. This is just the beginning.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, and you got 3 jobs, so we'll let you get back to your But thanks so much, and thanks for offering to answer some questions. And as well, I'll put my email in there. We do have a little bit of time that we're going to talk about the program as well in a little bit more detail. So um, don't leave yet. But thanks, Iman, for coming in and giving us your perspective. And that's been a really great thing to hear. It's really nice to hear that as somebody who teaches in the program that has such a positive impact on people. So.
Yeah, for sure. You know, your class is going to be filled with people that are working professionals that have had many years away from academia as well. Everyone's in the same boat. Talk to each other, lean on each other, and, you know, just fumble through it, muster through it together, you know?
Thank you.
Okay. See ya.
Bye. Ariana, do you want to put this? Oh, you are. You're ahead of me. Um, so we did a lot of really interesting conversation with Iman about the program, but now we'll go into a little bit more detail of what exactly the program looks like. Some of the things that you will have heard Iman talk about might be a little foreign to you if you haven't looked closely at the program and how it's set up. So if you're interested in the grad cert, I would just put the grad cert in here to sort of show how it fits into the program. But basically, the grad cert is is part of it's 9 credits of the 36 credits that you need to complete the MA. So the MA is composed of, if you see here at the bottom of the screen, it says intensive 1 and distance 1, distance 2, intensive 2, and distance 3. We're using the word intensive there for that 2-week term at the start of both of our intakes. So let's say you were coming in May, that intensive would be 2 weeks in which you have synchronous online sessions with your professors for 2 weeks, or for that 2-week time. So what we call is like pre-intensive, intensive, and post-intensive. And in that first part of the program, you do 3 courses at once, and you do that 2-week intensive, and it really launches you into the program. If you come to campus like Iman did, then you do those 2 weeks on campus with the cohort. So we model both the online, fully online, and the on campus are modeled after each other, like they're basically mirrored of each other. It's just that one has synchronous classes versus face-to-face classes. So that's the intensive one. After you finish that intensive one, which is about 10, well, it's about 12 weeks long, right? So you have 3 weeks, 4 weeks at the beginning, 2 weeks on campus, a week break to kind of recover, and then you finish up with a couple weeks or 3 weeks at the end. Then you go down into distance 1 and 2. And basically, distance 1 and 2 is that you're taking um, individual courses one after each other. So you would take one, like the next course that you take is called PCOM 540, which is like media history course. Then after that, you take politics, law, and society, right? So you're taking these individual courses as you go through. They're all online. They're asynchronous, which means that you're not compelled to meet every week at a specific time with your instructor, because we know people are working. But there are opportunities to meet. Sometimes professors will have optional drop-ins. Maybe you're working on group works and you'll have opportunities to do those sort of sharing moments with your cohort. That leads you all the way through till the next May, if you started in May, or the next September, if you started in September. So you're finishing year 1 at distance. And then when you start year 2, we do it all over again, and we invite you back for another intensive. So we run it exactly the same as we did. You do another 3 courses. Those 3 courses that you do in that second intensive are actually the courses that comprise of the grad cert. So those are the courses that you would take. And then you finish one of 3 pathways. So there's 3 pathways that you can finish the program. You can finish as Iman did with a thesis, which means that you would take 24 of what we call like our core courses. This would be that you take basically 8 courses. And then you do a thesis, which is worth 12 credits. The default is the research paper, because the research paper is sort of the middle ground between doing a thesis and the course-based, which means that in the research paper, you still work on an individual project. You still have the benefits that Iman was talking about because you become an expert, a really empowered expert in an area of your own choosing, because you choose that research topic or question on your own. But you also have the flexibility to do a couple of electives, more than if you were in the thesis. So you get to do a couple more courses, 2 more courses for that. So you'll see that then you have 30 credits of course-based and 6 credits of the research paper. So you still, in each one of these, you're doing exactly the same credits. It's just that the division of those credits is broken up. And then finally, if you're somebody who really is not interested in pursuing a research paper or a thesis, and you would rather have a diversity of voices, like you would like to, you're interested in maybe leadership, some leadership courses, or maybe you're interested in some of the other offerings that Royal Roads has in other programs or in other areas in the general studies, then we have the course-based, which is that instead of doing those 6 credits as a research paper, you do those 6 credits as what we call like non-program electives. In other words, you go and you take a business course, or you go and you take a leadership course, or you go and you take a humanities course, right? So you take a course that's outside of the communications program that's in an area that you're interested in. And so they all have their pros and cons. Like Iman, I think, did a really good job talking about the thesis. I think the research paper is a really good way to complete the degree. Like I said, it's the default way. You don't have to declare if you're going to do the research paper like you do with the thesis or with the course-based, which are both places in which you'd have to tell us that you're going to do something different than the research paper. But the research paper then you dig into a topic. So for example, right now in that research paper course, I have 6 students, and they're almost all of them are working on topics related to where they're employed. And so research paper, not always, but oftentimes, is a kind of something that you've always wanted to do at work, but you've never had the money or the time to do. So you're sort of digging into a question that might be beneficial for your organization or for your work, or you're digging into something that you want to develop a level of expertise because you want to maybe move into that new department or into that new role. So those are the kinds of things that you can do. So Stephanie says, I went to research paper option. The amount of pure pride I felt completed. Yeah, it's true, right? Stefan, what did you do for your research paper? Do you want to share? Do you mind sharing? Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Oh, she's giving me the power. Hi. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to speak today, so I'll say a couple things. I was originally in tourism, like I was working in hotels and wanting to break out of that in some way, and I didn't know how. So I actually put my effort and research paper into looking into, it's been 10 years now, but it was looking into Instagram posts of destination British Columbia on what were the most engaged with by people. So I looked at social media posts. I looked at the psychology of how people interact with a face on a picture, and I wish I could tell you more about it, but just the fact that I completed that paper and was how would I say it, was reminded that one of my skills that I didn't realize I had was the ability to write to an everyday level. Like I didn't write super academic when I wrote my paper, but it still did all of the sorry, I'm nervous. I didn't want to speak. Sorry. It still did all of the or met all of the needs of a academic research paper, but I didn't have to use all the big fancy words to be able to get the research and the point across. Since then, I've moved on and I went into university communications and fundraising, but I just got published in my first journal, and I wouldn't have been able to do that in a completely unrelated topic. But I would not have been able to write that journal article without having done this research paper 10 years ago. So it was worth it for me for sure. The course-based option was not an option when I was in, and I feel like I would have taken it. It would have been the easy way out for me. I'm just saying now, glad it wasn't an option for me.
Yeah, and I think, I think one of the things that people feel when they do a research paper or when they do a thesis is that real, you know, because it's very entrepreneurial in a way, because you set the goal yourself, you have support with a supervisor if you're doing a thesis or like a committee, or with the research paper with a faculty member to kind of keep you moving forward. But the work and the passion and the topic is all coming from you. And so there's a real ability to sort of follow what you are most interested in and important to you. But for people who are really busy, and maybe they're busy because they have they have familial obligations, professional obligations, right? And that's why we developed the course-based option, because the course-based option, when you come and you've finished 30 course-based credits, right? If you've done 10, you've now completed 10 courses, you're pretty good at completing courses. So, to finish off your degree in the course-based, you're just having to do 2 more courses. So there is the reason we opened up that third pathway is because there are people who want to come to the program who are really time or energy, they don't have a lot of time and energy for a particular project, and they just want to kind of, foot over foot finish the program, get their degree, and move on with their career. And if that's who you are, if that's sort of where you're at, then the course-based option is probably the best pathway forward. Or if there's specific areas that you wanted to kind of have an insight into that you'd like to have a little bit more detail, then you can, like I said, take a leadership course or something that's outside of a communications area. So we don't ask you to declare this when you apply. You come into the program and nobody knows what they're doing until about halfway through the 4th course. After you've done the intensive and you've started the next, and you've gone home and you're working on the next course, then there's a call that goes out and says, hey, you've had sort of now, sort of, you've been in the program for about 16 weeks or so. You've kind of had a sense of what it looks like. We've given you a couple of orientations, because we do, about the different pathways in more detail. Now it's time for you to think about how you want to complete your degree. So you don't have to decide that now. You don't have to decide that as you apply, because we know that things change and people's opinions change when they get into the program. So again, yeah, the grad cert is a really good option if you're interested in. You get to do 3 of the courses that are going to be basically exactly, they're the courses. They're not some professional development courses that you're only in class with people who don't have to write any papers. You're actually taking them with our MA students that are in the program with our professors who are teaching in the program. So you really get a high level of education from those courses, and you get the credits that you can use towards our program or other programs at Royal Roads if you decide to take another program. And I would just like notice that there's a kind of a breakdown here of all the different courses that you can take that are our core courses. I won't go through all of them, but I'll tell you sort of the way that you can think about a lot of them. And then I'll ask, and if there's some questions, and then I know Ariana has some things to talk about in terms of application process. But there's basically sort of three types of courses in the program. There's theory courses that you can tell are theory because they might literally have theory in the title, like Introduction to Communication Theory. So there's courses which are really about the ways we communicate and how do we understand different models of where communication comes from. And so there's those theory courses. There's what we call more like practice-based courses, which is what when Iman mentioned Barb's course, Barb teaches communication and culture in organizations or organizational communications. That's a practice-based course. Like she said, you're working with a client, you're developing a plan to solve a problem. Like, yes, there's theory, and there would be some theory and some discussion because you are in an academic setting, but the deliverables are all practice-based, professional practice-based deliverables. And then you have like research methods and process, which is sort of a hybrid between the two, because you know that in communication planning, you're going to have to evaluate what you did. Like you're going to have to see whether or not there's more people that have seen your Instagram posts than prior to your campaign, right? So you're going to measure, there's going to be some kind of evaluation, and that's research methods, right? It's, you know, it's analytics, or it's surveys, or it's focus groups. And on the other side, there's a whole theory of how to approach methodology, right? So methodology is like a very theory kind of rich thing. It has part of every kind of research process and academic and professional. And so there's a thinking about how do we know knowledge? How do we gain this knowledge? So it's sort of a bridge course because it's both theory and practice. And you'll notice that this sort of combination of theory, practice, and those bridge courses is really how the rest of the program shakes out. Some are more on the theory side of things, some are on the more practice side of things, and some of them sort of sit in between. And that's what you get at the end of the program as well, is that you really get a, a, a synergy between theory and practice. And so you're able to think about the things that you're doing in your professional practice with a purposefulness and with the weight and robustness of theory behind it. And I think that's part of what gives people, when they exit our program, that confidence, is because they're not just saying, I know that it's working because I know that it's working. They can say, I know that it's working because this, that, and the other. The because comes from all that learning and that expertise in theory and in understanding what makes good communication practice. Even though they might have years of practice behind them, that knowledge really makes their practice more purposeful and makes it more, powerful. So we're almost at time. Ariana, you have to run them through how to apply. I have my email in the chat if you're wanting to set up a time to chat with me about the program. I'm happy even to have a little phone call with you at another point in time and talk a little bit more about the programs. But I'll let Ariana take the helm here and tell you how to get into the program.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chase. Thank you again, Stephanie. Of course, Iman is not here, but thank you as well to Iman. I'll just take us through, folks, a little bit on how to apply. So if you are thinking about coming into the program, just a few quick things to consider. I know we just have a couple minutes here. So to come into the program, we have a couple different avenues. So we have standard admissions, and we also have flexible admissions. I know my colleague and friend, Andrea Boyes, is here from our enrollment advising department. So thank you so much to Andrea for putting these links in the chat. Hello. So for standard admissions folks, just a few requirements to consider. So that looks like the completion of a 4-year or comparable undergraduate degree in a relevant field from a recognized post-secondary institution, as well as having sufficient knowledge, skills, and abilities to complete a demanding course of study at a master's level. Normally as well, at least 2 years of work or volunteer experience, preferably in a leadership capacity. So that's one avenue. But if that does not suit you, or if that doesn't speak to you, we also have flexible admissions. This is one of my favorite parts about Royal Roads, is that it opens up more avenues for folks who maybe don't meet that requirement. So if you do not have an undergraduate degree, but more than 3 years of post-secondary education, you should have at least 3 years of relevant work experience, and that can count towards your admission requirements as well. Or if you have 2 to 3 years of relevant post-secondary education, you can have at least 5 years of relevant work experience. Or if you have no post-secondary education, you should have at least 10 years of high-level professional communication experience in a leadership capacity. I'll also mention this is assessed on a case-by-case basis, so this is not pre-prescribed. You don't apply to one or the other. This is just something to note if you fall under any of these categories. So a little bit on how to apply. We have first step, which is an online application fee. At the moment, it's $136.69. We also ask for in your application some supporting documents. So things like official transcripts, a detailed resume, going into details about your work experience, life experience, all of that good stuff. So we get a good picture of who you are. A personal statement as well, which is a little bit like a cover letter if you're applying for a job, kind of detailing what do you hope to get out of the program? What are you bringing to the program? A little bit about yourself, so on and so forth. This is all on our website, of course. 2 letters of reference, either professional or academic in nature. And then we also have some English language requirements, if that's applicable. Speaking of those, English is the primary language of instruction and communication. So if English is not your primary language, you can meet this through one of 3 ways. So either holding a recognized credential from an English-speaking country, submitting an English language proficiency test score report, that's always a tongue twister, completing one of our Global Learning and Language Center programs as well is also an option. So you can check that out at English language requirements. The link for that is of course prominent on our website too, so you can check that out. Some key dates if you are thinking of joining us. So key dates for the online intake starts on May 4th, 2026, and the application deadline February 4th, 2026. Blended starts a little bit sooner. So if you are looking to join us sooner and you want that kind of hybrid experience, the start date is July 6th, 2025, and the application deadline October 6th, 2025. Sorry, I think that should be reversed. That's my typo. But all of those relevant details, of course, are on royalroads.ca, so you can kind of browse through and check what we have coming up. We also have services that are available. Again, Andrea's here. I know she's popped her enrollment advising appointment link in the chat. Also a graduate of this program. Thank you so much. So she can also speak about her own experience. I know Iman had mentioned financial aid and awards. So you can explore things like loans, bursaries, scholarships, all kinds of stuff. Again, as Iman said, they are super, super nice. So if you are thinking of that, please do reach out. As well, Andrea already put that link, but if you want to learn more, it's just learn.more@royalroads.ca. As well, you can give them a call. There's some phone numbers on the screen and for toll-free for North America as well. So they can really help you narrow down your program options, speak with or connect you with students and alumni, and answer any questions about your application, which is fantastic. All right, folks. So with that, I believe we are right on time. Thank you to those of you who are still on the line. I hope this was helpful. Thank you again so much for your time. Thank you so much, Chase, for co-hosting. Of course, thank you to Andrea. Super, super nice to do this webinar with you all. Chase, I'll just pass it back off to you one last time. Any last things you want to say to wrap us up here?
Yeah, I think, reach out to me if you have questions about the program, happy to answer them. It's a great thing about Royal Roads is that it's a smaller university. And so, you do have accessibility to people like the program head who will be happy to chat with you about the program in more detail. And I would say if you're on the fence about applying, or if you're sort of like, I don't know if I should or I shouldn't, my advice is always put in the application, see what happens. You know, get your application in, get your place secured, and then make the decision. Then you can choose to go this year. You could choose to defer if you wanted to. But you know, if you're just sort of sitting on the fence and not thinking about it, maybe just go for it. You know, just put it in and get the acceptance and then think about it. Like Ariana said, there's different ways to come in, and lots of people come in through flex admission and they're really successful. So if you're one of those people as well, don't be intimidated by it. Just go for it.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. That's great advice. All right, folks, thank you so much again for tuning in. Of course, we hope we will see you in our webinar next time, and we hope that we'll definitely see you in the program. Thank you so much, everybody, and have an awesome day.